Hi, I'm Erin with the Witch of Saturn, here with Maggie of Made by Meg's Astro, and
Hi.
we are going to give you the astrology for this week. It is December 5th already. We're a little behind this week, so we're going to do a little catch up about the full moon and then take you through the rest of this weekend.
Yeah, that was totally my fault. Apologize.
Life happens.
Scheduling conflicts. Yeah.
We're good. So let me pull up the chart. So we're still in that full moon energy, where we see the moon is just 10 degrees past it being full. It was full last night at around 6 p.m. Eastern time. So the sun's still hanging out at 13 degrees of Sag, and we still have the moon in Gemini. So we'll be feeling that full moon energy for the rest of today. And the aspects
Mhm.
of that full lunation are still kind of applying and coming exact through the weekend. So I just kind of feel like the rest of this weekend is going to be that full moon energy. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. So, one of the biggest things about this full moon itself is that it's square the nodal axis, the lunar nodes of the moon. So, the south node in Virgo and the north node in Pisces. And those dictate where the eclipses happen. So when the sun and the moon square the nodes, that is our midpoint between the September eclipses prior or previous, and then the next set of eclipses that start at the end of January and into February next year. So sometimes when that happens, stuff about the eclipses manifest in our lives, either internally or externally, to kind of show us what was previously obscured out of view, because that's what eclipses do best. They bring in some sort of like faded circumstances, but we don't often understand them or see them for what they truly are until we get to this midpoint. And then you're also correct about the ruler of the full moon itself, Mercury, will step back into that grand water trine this weekend. And that, again, has a lot to do with whatever we've been going through in November, because it was very, very prevalent throughout all of November. Um, yeah, it's it's sort of like an eclipsey time warpy sort of day, and then we are retracing steps that Mercury just made. So now we're like still retrograde stuff from its retrograde.
Yeah, so I just want to backtrack on something you said because I think there was like just a little date, um, you know, misprint, let's call it, because the eclipses aren't until March, right?
Oh,
The,
sorry, yeah,
yeah.
February and March.
So we're in that, so that's that halfway point. Um, we have those coming on this axis this spring, and we just went through eclipse season in September, so we're right at that midpoint. And anytime you have the nodes involved, and this is really like a grand cross with that lunation and the nodal
Yep.
axis. It's unpredictable, kind of topsy-turvy. Things are kind of getting reoriented, or you're getting turned in different paths or directions. And it's kind of like feels a little bit outside of our control, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's like a crossroads sort of energy where we're like, which way do we go now? Do we go back towards the south node, which is an energy of decrease, or do we go towards the north node, an energy of increase? But with the north node of Pisces, that's also very, it's just sort of nebulous to me, because Pisces is sometimes the end of something, or like the old energy or the past in a way. With Saturn and Neptune there, about to make a brand new beginning in the cardinal sign of Aries, it seems like even though the North Node is there, we do have to focus on something from the past so that we can make a conclusion before they all step into the cardinal energy. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, whenever we have an outer planet go through a sign, it's a really long transit. And then in this case, they both moved into Aries, but then retrograded back into Pisces. And so what that signifies is that there's a wrapping up of those lessons that we learned through that transit, especially considering that this is it for Neptune and Pisces. Once it moves into Aries, we won't see that energy again in our lifetime. Saturn, we might, depending on your age,
In 30, yeah, in 30
and
years,
30 years.
if you're still kicking.
Like we can see that come back. Let's hope. I'm gonna,
Yeah. Okay,
knock on wood
everybody
there.
will.
But
But yeah, Neptune,
Neptune, not.
14 years. 14 years in the Pisces area of our lives, in whatever house that is for you. And you can kind of probably look at that. And for me, I'm just going to say my opinion on it is where we've been in the most sort of fantastical place. Like we've had some sort of weird fantasy world going on there. And I think it's about to get kind of like, oh, that's not really what it was. That wasn't really real. Um, Wherever that is in your life. Have you felt that at all?
It's
It's
hard
a
to
weird one.
say.
It's a weird
I don't
one.
know. I think that there's going to be a shift in like Pisces. And Neptune is a modern ruler of Pisces. And
Mm-hmm.
Neptune does have that disillusionment or those rose-colored glasses where things are nebulous and you're not seeing things clearly. But it also brings like an enhanced sense of mysticism and spirituality. And I think that there is going to be a drastic change with that moving into Aries. And like, I think that maybe more that kind of inability to tell what's real and what's not is because Saturn's also right there. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know that, I mean, like for me, Neptune's been tra transiting my third house, which is daily thought patterns, kind of like the way that your mind is thinking on a day-to-day basis. And so it's like, well, if for 14 years have I just not been thinking clearly? Like, I don't think that that really resonates with me. I think it's more
Okay.
that, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I hope not.
I okay, so for me, it's in my second house of like resources and money, and I've always never been super concerned with that kind of stuff. Like I've always in the belief that like, oh, it'll come if I need it or when it's around or whatever. But over the last 3 years when Saturn went through there, it's become serious. And I'm just kind of getting to that point where I'm like, oh, I can't think that way anymore. I can't kind of look at it that way anymore because it is a serious part of life and I do need to actually be like responsible in that place. And maybe that's why I'm thinking that way, but I just wanted to see if you kind of felt that same way or not, as Neptune is now at like the very end of Pisces and about to come out of retrograde there.
Yeah, I'll have to pay attention more as it moves into Aries and see where things kind of shift and change. I think it's challenging to be able to recognize such a long transit through a house until you're kind of out of it and looking back.
Mm-hmm. And that's and bringing it back to what's happening now. Mercury will go move on to trine both Saturn and Neptune over the weekend, and then trine Jupiter again. And maybe that's why I've been thinking about it like in a deeper sort of way while Mercury's in Scorpio, and what has that whole transit, not just the 14-year one, but like the 3-year Saturn transit, what has that been about? because it's about to be over. And Mercury's sort of like our thought process around that sort of stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons why Mercury had to do that 3 times. We weren't really seeing it clearly the first 2 times, or like understanding it on the depth of the level that it needs to be understood. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure that that kind of drives it home a little bit more. But overall, I mean, it's a grand water trine. I think it really is like about kind of learning something about our emotions, how we're seeing things. Like you said, finding clarity, figuring out how to move forward and work with whatever lesson we're learning in the best way, which is, Saturn. But in the long
Mm-hmm.
run, like Jupiter's involved, that's the great benefic. Um, Hopefully Mercury, now that it's direct, will be able to kind of excavate and get to the bottom of it in Scorpio. And so I kind of see it as like a positive transit that's kind of difficult to still sit in and get through because there's a real like grinding energy between Saturn and Mars to figure out how to actualize it, to take action on it. Um, Mars wants to go really fast, and Saturn wants things to slow down. So it always reminds me of like a train slamming the brakes and that like screeching on the tracks.
Yeah. And it can't actually really stop
Yeah, it's
fully.
gonna take some, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
gonna take
It's
some
coming.
time.
It's a collision that's going to happen, even though it's delayed. Like they're trying to like stop it from happening. Yeah. So that one's really, so what we're talking about is, so Mercury's gonna dive deep into the emotional undercurrent of the water signs, and then Mars in a fire sign, Sagittarius, will square Saturn on Monday. So it's kind of like, whoa, we're getting all these emotions and we're back in that very intuitive space, and we're sensitive and everything. That's either really helpful or some people don't like that. And then Saturn hits this like brick, or sorry, Mars hits like this brick wall of Saturn, and we have to like force ourselves through whatever that Saturn thing is or has been in Pisces.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I've been feeling that just like grand trine water energy as the different planets have moved through Scorpio and made that grand trine with Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune hanging out in that kind of close conjunction. Like this whole month, it's just been really emotionally trying. And having Mercury not in its optimal, you know, not moving through its like best way of operating in retrograde and still in
Mm-hmm.
its shadow
Mm-hmm.
period has been really rough. Like it's been stressful, it's been challenging. There's a lot of like mental patterns and things that have been coming to the surface that affect me on an emotional level that I've been like becoming more aware of or seeing in a different light. So it is like a challenging energy, but I'm hopeful that in the end, it's like bringing something to the surface that we're ready to heal and move through. And I think that when you have the nodes involved, that that is the case, like that we are being steered in the direction that we're supposed to go in, even if it feels really uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. That's like wrapping it all up in a nutshell for sure. It's gonna feel uncomfortable. It's gonna feel like, oh my gosh, there's one last huge obstacle to overcome in 2025, and then whoa, we did it. We're in the clear or something like that. As we hit the Sagittarius new moon eventually by the 19th. But yeah, Mars hasn't really been doing much of anything, even though all those personal planets, so Venus and Mercury and the Sun, went through Mars's sign of Scorpio and hit that grand water trine. So it is interesting that we've been having to go through that grand water trine, and now Mars is coming up against Saturn in water. To see, I guess, to see if like we sometimes Saturn comes up as like a lesson. And I know people are like, oh, I don't know. I don't think life has karmic lessons or tests and that sort of thing, but I do. I think it is. And sort of like, what did we learn? Especially because it's Mercury from all that water.
Yeah, what did we learn from all of that? And like, how can Saturn is also, it's not just like karmic lessons, right? It's like, how can we enforce structures in our lives? How can we create boundaries for ourselves? Like, what is the best way to do something and move forward? And I think that when we're talking about all of this emotion, all of this water and Saturn and Pisces in general has been a lot about like, where are boundaries lacking? And where
Hmm.
can we like tighten them up, or do we have to let down the walls a little bit? It's kind of like could go either way. Either are we someone who doesn't put in enough emotional boundaries in our lives and with other people? Do we need to say like, no, I'm not doing that? Do we need to be able to like put ourselves first and not let people walk all over us? Or, these old kind of familial passed down ancestral patterns of what we allow, where can we tighten that up? And or are we somebody who is really like bound up emotionally and really protected and to the point where it's keeping us isolated from others? And do we have to learn to soften that? So I think that
Yeah.
those themes of boundaries have been really like that's been a big theme for me with Saturn
Oh,
moving.
it has, yeah, for sure. Those repeating patterns that keep coming back until you're like, yeah, I'll have to deal with this. Either I've been too rigid or I've been not too rigid. What's the opposite of
Yeah,
rigid?
too
You
lax.
know,
Yeah,
too
too lax.
lax. Yeah, and that Jupiter in Cancer, I feel like it's been a lot about family stuff, like family dynamics. Do you let family in? Do you let family walk all over you just because they're family? Or do you not see your family like ever? And maybe you need to reach out to family a little bit more sometimes, especially when you need help with something or you need to talk about something with Mercury. There it's, yeah, or you're like you said last week, your made family or your found family. Like, are you really close to those people? Like, do you vent to them when you need them, or do you kind of just hold all this stuff in and say, oh, that's a burden to people? Like, I don't want to put that on their shoulders. I don't want them to have to deal with stuff. I don't want to be vulnerable like that. um, yeah, a lot of lessons there about past patterns or repetitive patterns or any of that stuff. And that's what I mean by like karmic stuff.
And when you have Mars in Sagittarius come in and hit that Saturn in Pisces energy and this kind of like T-bone square
Mm-hmm.
vibe, it's like Saturn or Sagittarius rather is all about like what is our moral philosophy and how do we align ourselves with that? How can we take action on what it is that, like we think is right or fair or just? Like there's a sense of integrity
Yeah.
there that I think
Yeah.
we have to like get in line with before we act and move forward and kind of tie all that up before 2026 when this kind of Piscean transit comes to an end.
Mm-hmm. And Jupiter rules that. It's a lot about like our beliefs, like what's
Mhm.
our outlook on life, all that kind of stuff, even our faith system. Those, yeah, like you said, the stuff that we fight for with Mars. So is it worth the
Mhm.
fight anymore, or do we let the fight, maybe the grudge go, the fight
Yeah,
go, something
that's a
like
really
that?
great insight about that energy. So I think that those
Mm-hmm.
are like the bigger themes that we're kind of sitting in this weekend. It does seem like more of an internal processing to me rather than like do something about this right now. It's kind of like more of a figuring it out, especially considering the Mercury retrograde and now moving direct. Like, okay, what have we learned from this back and forth? And like, can we get really clear on that before we start to move forward?
Yeah, can we, now that we have any information that we were previously missing, and that kind of takes me back to the eclipses too, because Mercury does rule Virgo. Is there something there that we previously misunderstood, or there was miscommunication during the retrograde, or something like that got all confuddled? And now are we fixing that? Are we mending, making amends? Are we moving through it and speaking clearly and having those understandings, so that we can just like, yeah, it's like kind of like clear it all out before the new year starts
Mhm.
and get us to a point where like, okay, we're in a good space and we can feel better about like setting our new year intentions or whatever you guys do in the new year, right?
Yeah,
Stuff
for
like
sure.
that.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that that's where we're at for this week. And then, keep in mind that the Mercury retrograde shadow ends on the 16th. So, like, we're almost through it. I'm really looking
Hmm.
forward to getting out of that personally. Um,
Yeah. I think when Mercury moves back into Sagittarius, just in general, things will get more like lighter. And then we have like Venus and Mercury and the sun there. I think Mars by then will be in Capricorn
which will be
or
nice.
about to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So uh even though like, so Venus is under the beams of the sun and they're all kind of be a little bit obscured out of view, it still feels more uplifting than being drenched by water lately.
It's been too much water. I know a lot of
Yeah.
people have been having a hard time and like take care of yourself this week, especially your health. I know a lot of people are struggling with that too, like just being sick or run down or that stress. It's the holiday season.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we'll have to see
Yeah, that's
how it
another
goes.
thing about that. Like after Mars makes a square to Saturn, it makes a square to Neptune. So all week next week might be a little bit like I feel exhausted, I feel depleted, but we'll get more into that next week. For now, try to like reinstill the amends so that you can feel good about where you're at
Yeah.
or make boundaries.
So let us know how it's going. Please leave us a comment, ask questions. We love to interact with you that way. You can find Maggie on Facebook on Made by Mags Astro. You can find me on Instagram and YouTube under The Witch of Saturn, and also on my website, which is erinlento.com.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone. See you next week.